The storm had arrived without mercy. Thick blankets of snow covered the roads, trees bowed under the weight of ice, and the world outside looked like a white wasteland. Yet inside a tiny time-worn house on the edge of the town, a woman named Rosa Moreno was busy stoking the fireplace, her breath still visible in the frosty air. She had little to her name, just her strength, her kindness, and a job as a housekeeper that barely paid enough to cover her bills. That morning, she had risen early despite the blizzard, sweeping the front porch and making a pot of stew from the last vegetables she had left. She had no idea that before the day ended, her small, quiet home would hold not just warmth, but 15 stranded millionaires who had nowhere else to go. This is not a fairy tale, but a real reminder of how kindness echoes far beyond the moment it is given. And if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected compassion, please take a moment now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ekaru, because stories like this remind us all of the beauty still alive in this world. It started with the storm cutting off the main highway that wound past Rose's house. By noon, the snow had grown so heavy that visibility dropped to just a few feet. Travelers had no choice but to pull off the icy roads, and one by one, a line of sleek, expensive cars began to slow down near her fence. The first was a black Mercedes, then a silver Bentley, followed by a pearl-white Range Rover. At first, Rosa thought she must be imagining it. Who in their right mind would be driving luxury cars in such brutal weather? But soon she realized these weren't just ordinary travelers. The 15 men and women who stepped out of those cars were dressed in expensive wool coats, polished shoes that quickly sank into the snow, and gloves that probably cost more than Rosa made in a week. They looked lost, freezing, and confused, holding their phones up on light to discover there was no signal this far out. Rosa hesitated. She had barely enough food for herself. Her cottage was already drafty and small. But when she saw one of them, a woman with a fur collar, shivering uncontrollably, Rosa pushed aside her fears and called out, "Come inside before you freeze." They looked at her in disbelief. These were people accustomed to luxury, to 5-star hotels and chauffeurs, not to the humble home of a housekeeper. But the storm roared around them, and Rosa's words became salvation. One by one, they stepped inside. Rosa apologized for the cramped space, for the mismatched blankets, for the stew that barely filled the pot. But as the wind howled outside, none of them cared. The fire crackled, the air warmed, and Rosa gave up her own bed so the older among them could rest. All night long Rosa worked. She brewed tea with the last of her herbs, offered slices of bread she had been saving for the week, and even sang softly in Spanish to calm the fear in the room when the power flickered out. And as she moved between them, something incredible began to happen. The millionaires, so used to being served, sat together on her worn carpet, their expensive watches catching the glow of the firelight, and they talked like ordinary people. They spoke of childhood, of losses, of regrets, of how money had never truly shielded them from loneliness. Rosa listened without judgment, her hands pouring tea, her gentle eyes reminding them of something they had all forgotten, the comfort of being cared for without expectation. By morning, the storm had eased and the road was slowly becoming passable again. Rosa woke to find her guests already on their feet, buttoning their coats, preparing to leave. She expected nothing from them. Not gratitude, not money, not promises. She only asked them to drive carefully. And as the last of their cars disappeared down the snowy road, Rosa sighed, wondering if she had done enough, if they would even remember her after stepping back into their worlds of wealth and power. But Rosa had no idea what awaited her the next day. At sunrise, the quiet lane outside her home thundered with the sound of engines. One after another, cars pulled up, sleek, shining, expensive, until the snow-banked road was lined with more vehicles than Rosa had ever seen in her life. She counted in disbelief. 10 cars, then 20, then 50. By the time she stopped, there were 135 cars stretching down the road, filling the morning air with exhaust that steamed against the cold. Out of them stepped men and women dressed in elegant suits and fine coats, each holding something in their arms: boxes of food, bags of clothing, blankets, envelopes. Word had spread overnight. The 15 millionaires Rosa had sheltered had called their friends, their partners, their colleagues. They had told them of the housekeeper who had opened her door with nothing to give but kindness, and together they had returned, not empty-handed, but carrying gratitude in every form they could manage. They brought new furniture to replace her broken chairs. They filled her pantry with food that would last months. They gave her envelopes heavy with checks, some marked with more zeros than Rosa had ever imagined. But more than that, they brought a promise that her life would never again be defined by scarcity or loneliness. Neighbors peeked out from frosted windows, stunned at the sight of so many cars outside Rosa's tiny home. Children pointed as movers carried in appliances as men in tailored suits shoveled snow from her driveway. Rosa herself stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "I don't deserve this." Yet every face that turned toward her carried the same reply, "Yes, you do." That night, as the sun dipped and the snow glittered beneath the lamplight, Rosa's home glowed with warmth. She sat in her living room, now filled with fresh cushions and baskets of fruit, surrounded by people she never expected to meet. Her life had changed forever, not because she had asked for anything, but because she had given everything she had without hesitation when others needed her most. And that, dear friends, is the power of kindness. A single act given freely can ripple outward until it transforms not just one life but many. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the goodness that still exists in the world, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Ekaru. These stories live on through your support, and together we can spread hope further than we ever dreamed. Before we close, I have a special request. Drop a comment below and tell us what's the greatest act of kindness someone has ever shown you or that you've shown another. Your words may inspire someone else to believe in kindness again. And so Rosa Marino's story ends not with the silence of a storm, but with the echo of engines, voices, and hearts united by compassion. She began as a housekeeper with little more than a warm fire and an open door. But she became something much greater, a reminder that even in the coldest storm, kindness is the light that guides us.